Hello and welcome to Good Games Well Played, episode 176. I'm Clint, aka JCM. With us this week is Isli.
Yo.
Messiah is asleep, so should not be joining us. If she happens to wake up and get on, that's fine. But either A, could have stayed up too late, or she had a migraine, so she can just get the rest. No worries. We do have kind of a random mix of news. There were some major things that happened, and then just a bunch of kind of small stuff that I thought was interesting. So PS5 Pro announcement. There's I feel like time is kind of a blur. Was the Pro announcement this week? Is when it happened?
God, I can't even remember. I feel like we talked about it last week, but we talked about it so much over Discord that I can't remember.
It was 5 days ago. Okay, yeah, we talked. I try not to talk too much about the stuff in this, but anyways, it was 5 days ago. There was a little 8-minute thread. I think it was Monday morning, or not Monday, but one of the mornings, and there was an 8-minute presentation. The first couple minutes were talking about the PS5 in general. And Mark Cerny was there talking about the three things they want to do. They had an increased GPU. They have PlayStation Super sampling PSSR. We talked about it before. There was leaks about that. Basically, their version of DLSX or FSR, and then sort of the AI machine learning for the ray tracing. And the problem was they showed the video. The stream was not in 4K, so you can't see any of the differences. It's already compressed when it's live like that. So it was just a really bad presentation. Some people were saying why didn't you just have Digital Foundry do a video so they could put it out as a supplemental thing at the same time? But it's a PS4 Pro console, no disk drive attached to it, $700, 2 terabyte hard drive at least. I'm interested to see some of the stuff, but that it'll do for existing games and new games. But in the presentation, it's really hard. The one thing I'm really interested about, which I saw some Digital Foundry talk about, Dark on Twitter, was saying how Final Fantasy VII Rebirth actually looked really good, because that game had really bad image quality. That's one of the reasons I stopped playing it, because I was I can't stand every power pole in that game just ghosting when I run by or I rotate the camera, and it's just the image quality in that game is just not great. And so I'm just gonna kind of bounce. Plus, I wasn't too big on the combat like I was in the first one. But that was one thing. I'm okay, it looks like it could be cleaned up. But yeah, there's just no good presentations. And I have no interest. At least when the PS4 Pro came out, it was from a consumer standpoint, okay, there's, you can do 4K with checkerboard rendering. So that incentivized me to be okay, now I can invest in a new TV, because my TV at the time was kind of old. And I would be able to, play these games at a higher resolution. Plus, it ran games better. So stuff we talked about this before, Battlefield 1 was a huge thing that ran at a almost lock 60 instead of that 45 to upper mid 50s kind of range when you're playing. That's a huge advantage in multiplayer. But it launched at the price that the PS4 was when it launched. So
Yep.
this didn't. So it's kind of okay, if my PS5 breaks down, maybe I could see getting it. Or if GameStop has some sort of insane trade-in deal. I think they had a pretty good deal when I got the PS4 Pro, where I just traded in one of my PS4s. But if they have something similar, maybe. But yeah, right now it's just
I mean,
I don't know.
I conceptually, not with what was released, but conceptually, I love the idea of Pro consoles. I honestly don't have a problem with a mid-generation release that plays games better. With the PS5 Pro in particular, I have some major issues with how it was done, because the PS4 Pro made a lot of sense. The PS5 Pro to me is the dumbest thing in the world. So conceptually liking how a mid-generation release, I think part of what goes along with that is a price drop to the original console, and this coming in at the same price or slightly less than the original console. Because I understand it's an upgraded version, but you're essentially trying to woo people over who either A, haven't bought a PlayStation yet for some reason, which, does happen, but I think gets rarer the further you go in a console generation. Or B, you're trying to capture people who want to upgrade from their existing console, or replace, rather, their existing console. So the only way I'm replacing my existing console with a PS5 Pro is if it's similarly priced. So the price is just batshit insane. The second part that doesn't make sense for me is I bought the disk drive and have a lot of disc games for PS5, which means that I'm totally there's no market for the PS5 Pro to me, because if I buy that, I can't play my PS5 games anymore.
Well, yeah, the you'd have to buy the attachment for
Right.
the PS
So
with the driver, which is like $80.
right. So I'd have to buy the attachment for that. So all of a sudden, instead of $700, it's $800.
Hmm.
Because like once you're talking about taxes and stuff,
Right, and then
you're
if you want
talking
the
about over
stand,
$800. And if I want the stand, um, so for me, you're talking about a mid-generation upgrade console release that is almost like when all is said and done, 75% more, almost twice as much as what I spent on the original PS5. Like I could see it nearing $1,000 when all is said and done with taxes. It doesn't make sense. I think it's the dumbest move in the world. Like I just don't get it. It's too expensive. It doesn't have the same features. I understand it's a more powerful console, but I don't get who they're marketing it towards. It just seems stupid.
yeah, I'm really curious like how well the PS4 Pro did because I feel like this is like for the enthusiast market. Like when Nvidia comes out with the 40, 70, 80, and 90, like the bulk of the people out there aren't buying the 4080 or the 4090. And even so, a lot of people still buy the 30 series cards because those will be cheaper now that the new series is out. Like it's typically only the hardcore enthusiast of the PC gaming folks who will buy those new high-end top of the line cards because you also typically have to upgrade your stuff like, oh, I need a new PSU now to or a bigger case and what have you because the 4090 is so goddamn huge. So this is like, okay, it's if it's just an enthusiast console, which is fine. I'm really curious what their projection is, like what percentage of users do they think are going to get it. The other thing too with the Pro console is like this one came out a year later than the same time as the PS4 Pro. Like that came out 3 years. PS4 launched in 2013. PS4 Pro is 2016, and this PS5 launched 2020. This is coming out later this year in 2024. So it's like they're taking the series, the Xbox One X approach, and doing it a year later. But I'm like, is that too late? But then is it because you're waiting for the tech, like working on your PSSR technology? And there's stuff like the PSSR bit, like seems really cool because like if that works really well and it's like it is up there as like a console version of because right now games use like FSR2 I believe in some stuff and it's FSR2 isn't super great. Like you can get a lot of ghosting. Like Immortals of Avian was a really good example of a game that used FSR2 and just seeing the how you know it's like it works but there are drawbacks. Like DLSS is like far and away the best for this, but if PSSR works really well, it's like, okay, then that means we can have that implemented into the next console. And then you kind of don't need a Pro for the resolution bit. But if also, I'm curious about the ray tracing as well. Like if they're saying you could, ray trace at 2 to 3 times faster, I'm like, that's great. But you didn't upgrade your CPU like you did with the PS4 Pro. It's just the GPU. And then the other thing too is like, yeah, it's expensive, sure. But it's like, you need the games, you need the support. And unless there is a mandate out there to be like, oh, you have to have support, like to do this, it's like it really comes down to what does that support look like? And there were games, on PS4 where like, okay, we'll uncap the frame rate for PS4 Pro. And sometimes doing that was like really good. Obviously, there wasn't VRR on the PS4 Pro, but there is VRR on the PS5. So it's like, okay, maybe that could work if it can kind of get close to that 60 in some games, what have you. And the other thing I'm really curious about too with the Pro console is like, okay, you're doing this mid-gen refresh. I'm really interested what it would look like if you did an inverse of the Xbox Series consoles. And instead of being like, hey, here's our flagship console in the X, and then here's an entry-level console that has some of the same bells and whistles, you just don't get the same output. Like it's not the same spec, so it's cheaper. What if they launched the Pro at the same time that they launched the PS5? Like, what if it's, hey, here's this console, whatever, and here's this console, it's the enthusiast one at launch, and it has these extra bells and whistles, and then you'd be like, then I feel like that's kind of the better time to do it because that's, it's
See,
not like Nvidia drops their graphics cards tiered. They do it. It's like here's the 3 cards all at the same time. Pick the one you want. There you go. I'm really interested to see what it would be like if they did it at
I
launch.
so the only reason I don't feel like that will ever happen is uh, kind of related to the PS5 Pro problem I have. They haven't dropped support for PS4 yet. So all the games coming out right now are still basically PS4, not all of them, but a lot of games coming out right now are still PS4/PS5.
Hmm.
And releasing PS5 at launch with like a lower tier console, well, I might just point to the PS4 Pro and say, like, just get that one. Like, if you're going to get a cheaper console, just get the PS4 Pro right now because they're
Not even.
releasing a lot of the same games.
I'm not saying cheaper though. Like keep the PS5. PS5 is the base, and then the PS5 Pro. So not even like don't make it less like the Series S. Like just if it just launched as is with the same specs, and they had one that's like maybe it's got it has that beefier GPU. It has some other thing, maybe some more RAM or something. Like I'd be really curious to see, because then your base model is like okay, still your flagship, but it's like I guess the issue there is then you have to give 2 dev kits to people versus just letting the
and
studios
it all has to be developed for the same one anyways, right? Like you can't.
Yeah, but then it's like okay, if you can hit it, and then maybe like again, just like for PC games right now already have to be optimized for multiple different graphics cards, and so many people are still using like either like my buddy who's still using a 1060, and it's like, and he's playing games, but he's not playing obviously the craziest stuff. But I'd be really curious, like, okay, what if you did it at the same time? The problem, I guess, there is that dev times take so long that the reason you do it here is because it's like, all right, we can see, like Mark Cerny says, we're seeing what people are asking for, what they like to see, yada yada. And I guess the benefit could be that if the PS4 Pro kind of helped them in designing the PS5, like, okay, here's the Pro, devs have it for a while, instead of being stuck for 7 years with the PS4, you had the PS4 for 3, then the Pro, and you'd be like, okay, what do you like about this refresh? And then 5 years, 6 years later, like, okay, we'll take a lot of that stuff they like from the Pro and we'll iterate from it. So now the Pro spec becomes the basis for the PS6, as well as whatever new bells and whistles they got, maybe an improvement to PSSR, and what have you. So I'd be curious from the dev side and like R&D aspects of a Pro console. If it's like, hey, we kind of want to go this direction, so we spec a console to be that direction, and let's get it out there and see what developers think. And if it goes well, we improve on it. Like it's almost like soft launching a future idea you have now. Be like, hey, let's put those ideas, PSSR, into a console, make it a Pro version. If it works, we'll put more R&D efforts into that for PS6. But I mean, like I said, it comes down to the games, man. Like I just don't know the ray tracing aspect seems really cool because I love ray tracing. There's so much people only think about the reflective ray tracing, and obviously that's all they can really show they show like, Gran Turismo having it in the gameplay. But like even global illumination, like global illumination ray tracing is fantastic, and ray trace shadows are great. And then just because when you have that global illumination, it gets rid of that like baked in ambient occlusion that you can get that looks really weird. And it looks so much better. Like that's such a better visual overhaul to me than just being like, okay, we're rendering it at 4K flat. Like, and then it's like, yeah, I'm really curious about PSSR. Like, there's so many games I play now where, because I'm playing on PC, where like I'll try them. Like, okay, I'll do DLSS performance or DLSS quality, and kind of see like how it looks. And it's like not losing a lot of that quality while improving your frame rate is just really interesting. I'm really curious what they could do with PSSR, because essentially it's checkerboard rendering, right? That's what you're doing. It's the same. It's the same thing, just a different tech. And then behind the scenes, they increased the price of the controller during all of this.
Just sneakily, not even commenting on it, increased it $5.
Yeah, worldwide. Like,
yeah,
like hey, $5 more. It says colorways though, so maybe only the color ones. So the standard DualSense. Oh no, it does. Okay, so the standard DualSense in white, Starlight Blue, Galaxy Purple, Cosmic Red, Midnight Black, and Gray Camouflage now. Yeah, okay, so it was the white one. For some reason it said colorways. And I thought that meant like everything but white. So they're 75 instead of 69, which is just $70. So expensive. And then the more expensive, I didn't realize there was more expensive colors. I didn't realize the Sterling Silver, Cobalt Blue, and Volcanic Red were already 75, and now those are 80.
I think the ones that had all the ones that had the metallic tint to them were $5 more.
Yeah, I can see that in silver.
I think those like cobalt. I think all of those ones are like slightly metallic colored, if I recall correctly.
Volcanic red. Yeah, I'd be curious what the difference between cosmic red and volcanic red is. But yeah, because I can kind of see in the picture the silver one looks a little more shiny, and the blue kind of does. Red doesn't really, but maybe it is. But
I'm
yeah,
pretty
it's
sure
like this.
that's what it was. That it has just this slightest little sparkle sheen to it that the cosmic red doesn't.
Yeah,
Therefore, $5 more expensive, which is like okay, whatever.
yeah, but yeah,
Did
just
they increase the price of the? God, what was the special one? The Pro controller they released. I'm
I
blanking on what
haven't.
they called it.
It's not in this list. I think it's just the DualSense. I think the Pro. No, there. The controller. Let's see. Blah blah blah. 2 weeks ago, steep price increase. Seeming on the verge of an official. No. The Pro controller, I think, is just staying at what it is. I mean, there's who knows how many of those are selling. I'd be really curious, but yeah, no. Pro controller has stayed the same at least, but. Yeah, they just quietly did that. Like it's just like, oh hey. I mean, not that I need one. I have freaking 4 controllers, but man, I really hope these controllers are forward compatible. Like that's forget backwards compatibility. Like I want the controllers to be forward compatible because I really like the PS. I had to use a PS4 controller the other day to I forget what I was doing, but I was doing something. I picked up that controller. I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna break this thing.
Dude, they're so different. And I used to think like, oh man, I'm so glad that the PS4 controller is lighter than or is heavier than the PS3 controller. Like
Man,
the further back you go, the more you're just like, this is a toy. Like this weighs nothing and is a toy. I'm going to break it.
yeah, and what's crazy is like I'm trying to pick up my Pro versus like the Pro. The Pro is heavier than the PS5 controller. Man, PS4 remote just and I like the PS4 controller as well when it came out. Like I like the changes they did to the handles, how they made them a
When
little
it
more.
when it first came out, I was like, this is the greatest thing. This controller is amazing.
Yeah, I loved it. But they had now the DualSense. I'm like, I just it's like man, it's so night and day, especially after using the DualSense for so long and the Pro. And the Pro is just like I really like the weight of the Pro, but I wonder how much it too is like well, I was gonna say like, okay, how much is like weightlifting factor into that? Obviously, you know what I mean? Like, when you're a kid, you think a car's like huge and you get in a Chrysler, later and you're like, oh, this car's actually kind of tiny. It's like, well, that's because you're an adult. It's like, well,
I
I
don't think it's
wasn't.
weightlifting so much as like it could just be being a kid versus an adult, but I do think there's a level of like comfort. When I compare the DualSense and the PS4 controller to basically like TV remotes and things I have, like the Roku TV remote is really light, but everything else is still pretty heavy too. So all this to say, I love the DualSense. I really hope they
Yeah.
keep that one moving forward.
Yeah, and again, make it forward compatible because you can use the. I think they say you can use the DualSense or DualShock 4 on a PS5, or maybe you can't because I know you can use the PS4 control on a PS3, but it has to be connected via cable. And I think maybe you can use the DualSense with the PS4 connected. I don't think I ever had to do it. I did it on the PS3 just because it was like when I was trying to play Little Big Planet with my kid. It's like, well, I'll just do this. And I was playing like some old games, and I was so used to the PS4 controller. I was like, I don't want to play these old games on PS3 with the PS3 controller. But yeah, I really hope they're forward compatible, just because I'm like, I have so many, and it'd be nice to just take them forward, especially the Pro controller. You better. You released an official Pro controller. It sure as shit. Like I don't know what else can change. Like the touchpad was introduced last time. They kept the touchpad. Now you have this DualSense feature, which I really like in the games that do it, but not many games like take it to its full advantage. So, like, keep that in there. Like you have to, at least for legacy stuff, right? Like I mean, this had to have a touchpad because there's games that use that touchpad feature. I mean, obviously there's ways around that. You can use it as just a button. Like not many games are using it to its full extent, I suppose. But like, yeah, it better be very similar because I I like the controllers and I don't want to have to get a bunch of new ones. But maybe that's why they're increasing because like, oh, we're just gonna sell these forever. But anyways, and then yeah, the other bits of news we got is trying to see here. The PlayStation Plus catalog for editions for September have been revealed. They're going to include the Plucky Squire, which I hear good things about. Not my kind of game, but I hear some good things about the Plucky Squire. Far Cry 5, and trying to see Pistol Whip, Night in the Woods, Mr. Mosquito, and a game, I was going to say, and something else, but it's literally called something else, exclamation point. But yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff in there as well. Under the Waves, Chernobylite, Road 96.
Chernobylite's supposed to be good.
Yeah. Far Cry 5, I forget how co-op works in that game. But yeah, Far Cry 5 is good. It's the PS4 version, but it does have it did get a patch, so it runs at 60 on PS5. So I play that. Plus, it's just, I love running around that world. Montana's just really nice to. It's just a fun place. And then what else we got here? We have also news that apparently there's supposed to be some big major changes coming to Destiny 2 since Bungie's trying to win back some their player base. But this is a report from IGN saying the live service first-person shooter currently is seeing its lowest concurrent player count on the PC platform Steam, and will adopt a new model moving forward that includes the release of 2 medium-sized expansions and 4 major free content updates annually, according to Bungie.
So what I don't get, 2 medium-sized expansions. I thought the whole point of the final shape was that Destiny was done. That Destiny 2 was done and they were moving on from it. Wasn't that the point? So of course your numbers would drop down. Did I misunderstand just everything?
I think it's just to get into the next story chunk, kind of the next Final Fantasy expansion.
I know. I thought it was to move on from Destiny 2 and potentially go to a Destiny 3 or different game, but it very clearly was. I mean, based on this and others, it very clearly was not. And I'm just well, this actually makes me less interested in it, not more interested, because at some point I don't know. I think I just don't care about games as a service anymore. They just take up too much time.
Yeah, Bungie said, quote, "This evolution aims to enhance the player experience through a multi-year saga, introducing a non-linear story, more systemic innovation, and significant improvements to core game activities and rewards," end quote. So I'm curious what they're
all just random buzzwords.
Yeah, I'm curious what they're going to do there, especially it's got to be tough when you wrap up a major storyline. It's all right, now what are we going to do for story stuff? But we'll see how long it goes. I mean, I feel like they're probably not going to work on a Destiny 3 right now because they're focusing on Marathon, and they canceled the other project. They've had too layoffs over there. They got to just kind of hunker down and just work on what they got. The other bit of news we have here is that Star Wars Outlaws received its first big patch. One of the major things from it was that it kind of changed the way the stealth mechanic works in that game. There was a lot of side quests, and I haven't had a chance to test it myself, but where it's oh, do something stealthily. And if you got caught, it wasn't just oh, stop them. Some missions are oh, you can keep going. You just have to stop them from raising the alarm. And usually the person who's going to raise the alarm has a little icon above their head, and you just have to take them down. But there are other stealth missions where oh, sneak into this place. But if you get caught, you instantly fail, and you just restart at a checkpoint. And I guess the reason they did that is because, and I talked about it last week, killing people of a syndicate that you're sneaking into does lower your reputation. So maybe the idea is you need to have this perfect, so the only reputation you lose is by doing the heist, or doing whatever you need to do and getting out. And then of course then I'm well, how do they know it was me if I snuck in? But stealing the stuff versus additional reduction to your standing with that faction because you're killing a bunch of people on your way there. So I haven't had a chance to test it because I'd have to know a mission that was a pass or fail on the stealth. But that was a big patch that came in that I know they said they were trying to work on super quick because people were a little annoyed about the that bit.
And that bothered you last week too, didn't it?
No, the stealth bit, it didn't bother me too much. It was just, my issue was I had one mission where it's it wasn't a fail. Obviously if I got caught, there was just a lot of people around. It was on an Imperial space station. And then they would just go sound the alarm, and if the alarm sounds, then I failed. I'm okay, that makes sense, because the alarm sounds, I can't get off the ship or off the space station with the ship with what I need to do for the objective. But other ones were it was just straight up oh, you got caught, okay, fade to black, you failed. But this one was like that. It was I could still fight if I wanted to. It was just too much. My issue with that one was that the layout was a little funky on the map, and the way... And I talked about the way the stealth mechanics work, and maybe there's more tools that they give you later. Nyx is a really nice companion to you can distract, you can attack people Nyx, and then run up and punch them, and that doesn't alert anybody. They just kind of go oh, they're all too distracted by being attacked by Nyx. But there are some enemy positions where I feel whenever it's 2 enemies, it's really difficult. Where I feel and again, we talked about it before. The other thing you're missing in the Star Wars game is a silent weapon. And in most stealth games, especially Far Cry or even a shooter, is that you typically have a suppressed weapon. And as far as I could tell, there are no suppressed weapons in Star Wars. There is an R1 attack that you can do, which is a pacifying blast. But if there's 2 enemies, you can't hit both of them. So I guess you'd have to try to like send nicks on one and then blast the other one, but I don't know how it still makes a noise. So it's not like super quiet, but yeah, maybe there's more tools later on where you can do a silent blast, but I feel like no silenced weapons is what makes it kind of difficult. And I did figure out you can do a whistle. They like never teach you that in the game, and I was like, what is that music icon down in the bottom? Because it was on the same button that you hit to summon your vehicle when you're in the open world, and it's like I held it down, and then eventually she whistles. I'm like, okay, that's to lure people close, like it's your knock or your Assassin's Creed whistle from the bush. I'm like, that's helpful. I wish you told me about that sooner. But yeah, so they fixed those kind of like pass fail sections. But again, I'd have to replay one and see how it plays out. If it's like, okay, if I have to fight my way out, is like at least it feels like levels are segmented to where if you get in a fight in one spot, it doesn't necessarily alert everybody in the entire zone. It's like, okay, in this area, I guess assuming this is where they would hear the commotion because no one's radioing it in. They don't have earpieces in or whatever. Like it's like, okay, if you can take those guys out, then it's you didn't raise the alarm on the entire base. I was doing one mission last night. Well, I'll never mind. I'll save that for when I get into what we're playing. But yeah, no, I didn't have too much issues with it. It was just I know a lot of people didn't like those pass checks. They weren't like that hard to do. You just had to be patient. And that is the one problem is I feel like because you can't quietly take people out, having to be patient for like guard rotations can be really frustrating. Because also it's like if you're a viewer watching someone play the game, like it's not that exciting. But also if you're playing, it's like okay, I know what I have to do. I just have to wait until they go all around because I don't have any silent takedowns. But anyways, at least from a distance. Moving on. So we knew that Xbox Game Pass Standard tier was going to be coming out. They talked about the restructuring of their pricing, yada, yada. And they said, Xbox Game Pass Standard would have access to some games day one or as part of the catalog, but they didn't specify which ones. But now we know that Xbox Game Pass Standard, which is $15 a month, doesn't include Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, Starfield, Diablo 4, and a bunch of other games. They aren't available on Standard. So I'm like, all right, so Standard.
Honestly, not at all surprising to me. The games they pulled from it are the exact games you'd want to play, which is pretty much exactly how I would expect a tier like this to work.
Yeah, it's like, it's so weird. It's like, okay, why would you get this then? Like, I guess because you don't get access to day one titles, but you do get multiplayer and member deals and discounts. I'm like, okay, then what's the point? Unless it's like, I'm curious what that delay is. Like, if it's like, okay, you don't get it day one, but you'll get it 3 months from now. I mean, that's not long of a wait. You're just not part of the conversation initially, but I'm like, okay, that's good. But then I feel like that just means people are delaying their renewal, I guess. If it's like, oh, I played everything that was out, I'm going to cancel my subscription, and then I'll have to wait a couple months after this game releases to play it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, $5 more a month. I feel like people would just do that $5 extra and just pay $20 for Game Pass Ultimate and do that. But it does say that PC Game Pass, which is $12, it has EA Play as well. Microsoft confirmed that day one titles will be included in that subscription. Yeah, so Xbox Game Pass Core, you get 25 Xbox Game Pass games, all them multiplayer member discounts. And then the Xbox Game Pass Console is the legacy one, which is kind of like how it is now. And then, yeah, so I don't know why anybody would get Xbox Game Pass Standard and not just Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Like, if you're going to get just, it's interesting that they still have just a PC one that has day one titles, but the Xbox Game Pass Core for a console doesn't have day one titles, but PC does. It's like, I guess they don't want to lose that PC market or the bulk share of Game Pass is on Xbox, so they're not really losing that much by keeping it there for the PC players. I don't know, man. It's weird. Weird decisions.
It's weird, but I'm seriously not at all surprised by it. Like, it doesn't make on the one hand, it doesn't make sense because who are they marketing it towards? On the other hand, if you were going to release a cheaper version, you're going to pull out the things that are most popular, which like the most popular things are going to be your Call of Duties and your Starfields. Like those are going to be the ones that drive people to purchase a more expensive Game Pass.
It's almost that mentality of increase the price and remove features, like which other services have done, not in the game space, but like on just computer subscriptions in general. It's like we've seen, like I can't remember recently, but like that's kind of standard for a lot of tech stuff. At least in this case, they're grandfathering in the folks who are already subscribed, which is good because it's like, okay, we're not going to take that away. You're already there. You're a member of this community. Keep it. But it's for new people. So at least that's good that they're not like retroactively doing it. They're grandfathering people in at that old tier, which is nice. So that's the one good thing about it. At least they're keeping those people in there. But yeah. And yeah, keeping it with Xbox, they laid off 800 or 650 people this week. Phil Spencer just sent out a memo saying, to organize our business for long-term success. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure this is just because you guys spent so much money on Activision. They're like, this is what the fucking
Activision and Starfield.
What the court was saying, like, this is a concern that, you do this, are you just going to let a bunch of people go because of all the money? And it's like, nah, we're not. And it's like, yeah, you are. It's like, that's kind of par for the course. That was a lot of money you spent. Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's like, they fired so many people this year.
I mean, it's a shame because I think everyone knew that if they hired all of these new people and I don't think they doubled their workforce, but like they hired with Activision something like 600-700 employees, didn't they? Like it was a really large number.
I don't know because in this article I'm reading, it says since they acquired Activision Blizzard in 2023 officially, they've let go of 2,550 people. That's fucking insane.
So maybe even more.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. How many people? I wish I knew how many because it was Activision Blizzard.
Activision Blizzard had approximately 5,000 employees, and they've laid off approximately 2,000 of them.
Yeah, so it's like, and 50% of that count total across the business.
Wait, hold on. When did they buy Activision Blizzard?
Officially, they acquired them in 2023.
In 2022, Activision Blizzard had 13,000 employees. As of August 2024, they had 5,000 employees.
What? Jesus Christ.
So they've lost 8,000 employees from Activision Blizzard.
How did that happen?
I have no idea. That's worth fact-checking at some point, but...
That seems insane. Like, that means that they would have had a shit ton of people go prior to this. Man,
yeah, it sounds like that's what happened.
And so many of these folks were like, because Activision had that, hey, come back to the office bullshit. So, like, you move out to California. We talked about this, and you move out, and it's like, oh, now we got to let you go. Just, months later, it's like, whatever, man. It's like, all right. And then speaking of, within the realm of layoffs, Annapurna Interactive's entire gaming staff just resigned. There was a dispute with leadership, and I guess to try to get them to be a little more independent, and it just didn't work out. So all 25 members of Annapurna Interactive collectively resigned together, which is insane. It's like, just unity in the team. Like, oh, this didn't go through, we're all leaving. It's like, okay, what does it mean for everything else that you're doing? Because you still got the stuff you were working with Remedy to make Control 2, which is apparently still going to happen. But it's nuts, man. And they're doing a bunch of was it Annapurna? No, that's it. That was a different guy. All those horror games that were announced. I think that's someone else.
Now, Annapurna, the big ones that are coming to my mind are Outer Wilds, and they did Stray. I know they did a lot of other stuff too, but
yeah.
It's Outer Wild. They published Outer Wilds and they published Stray. And I think they published
There's
What
another
Remains
game.
of Edith Finch.
There's another game recently. It was like a spooky game. The cover was like a woman with glasses that are kind of shining and red. That was a recent game that came out. But
they were publishers of all of these games. They weren't the developer. So
yeah, publishing Neon White, Cocoon.
They didn't develop any games though, did they? So it's not like they lost like the staff developing, but it's still weird. Yeah,
it's they didn't lose. They just lost their. Yeah, I guess if they're just a publisher, but let's see. I'm trying to go through here read this report. This report from IGN reporting on it, but while negotiations still undergoing, Annapurna Interactive announced it had rehired former Epic Games executive Hector Sanchez as its president of Interactive and New Media, and Paul Doyle as its head of strategy. IGN understands that Sanchez was expected to head up Annapurna's gaming efforts in Gary's absence once his part of the company was spun off. While Gary now having resigned, Sanchez has taken that lead. So it seems like they wanted to be a little more independent to do actual game dev stuff, not just publishing boutique. But yeah, they're just gone. So it's kind of nuts. Like, just it was crazy to be like, hey, okay, we're out. Just a
weird times. Weird
Yeah.
times.
And then keeping in a similar vein, the Metro devs 4A Games is going to be remaining with Embracer Group after Saber Interactive decided against buying the studio. So Saber Interactive was planning on acquiring 4A Games from Embracer, but I guess they had changed their mind about doing that. In a statement, Embracer's controversial co-founder, senior CEO Lars Wingfors said, "We are satisfied with the conclusion of this transaction and very glad to see great teams and assets of 4A Games and Zensu's remain with Embracer. They will be an important building blocks to continue journey." It's like, yeah, I'm sure you would say that, but yeah, I don't know why it doesn't say why they didn't do it. I'm curious, especially because Space Marine 2 did so well. Like, it's not like it can't be a money thing, but I guess they just declined to buy him.
Everyone's just fucking stressed right now, is my theory.
Yeah, probably. I wouldn't doubt it. But yeah, that's it for us. Again, just weird hodgepodge of stuff, like kind of lukewarm PS4 Pro, hidden controller price hikes, weird Xbox Game Pass tiers, with no day one games,
No reason to do
layoffs.
it. Yeah, just a lot
People
of
just
like
leaving.
negative news.
Yeah, it was so odd. Just weird week, man. Weird week. But all right, we can go ahead and move on from that to what we've been playing. You don't leak anything to Discord, so I never know. I know you were playing Astro Bot. I'm assuming, were you still playing Astro Bot?
I did finish Astro Bot. So I went through, I got all the trophies. I've 100%ed the game. I loved it. There were a few secret hidden levels that were more challenging, but in general, it was just a really fun game. And I was shocked that by the time all was said and done, when I platinumed it, I'd only played the game for like 11 hours. So I'm not going to say it's a short game. It's more of like, it's a game that respects your time and it cuts out all of the bullshit that isn't fun. And I think that's one of the reasons I enjoyed the experience so much is you kind of just go from like fun thing to fun thing. There's not really a whole lot of wasted time doing anything, which I enjoyed. The worlds and the levels were always really fun to explore. Each level is the structure of the game basically is that there are like 5 or 6 hub worlds or something, each with their own levels in them, and then each level is pretty linear with like hidden collectibles throughout, and each level is themed off of something else. So you're trying to basically just get from like point A to point B in the level is the goal, while getting collectibles along the way and rescuing your Astrobot friends. But I enjoyed it a lot. It was really fun every time you go somewhere new, seeing like what theme they had picked. It was fun discovering all of the PlayStation history, like Easter eggs and callbacks. The collectibles were, it's one of those games where like 70% of the collectibles are kind of obvious, and then it's the 30% of collectibles that are a little bit hidden that don't gatekeep progress that were really fun to find. And then the challenge levels, I enjoyed pretty much all of them. So highly recommend the game. Worth supporting. Astrobot's really cute. The cosmetics in the game are really fun. There's no DLC. There's no like price gouging or ripping you off on anything. No microtransactions. It's just a really fun game through and through. I do stand by my original comment of like, it is a game geared more towards kids than adults, which is fine. Like, that's not a negative thing. But it is on the easier side of difficulty.
Yeah, I'm trying to. So I want to get in there and play it. I keep seeing like, not that there's spoilers, but it's like stuff I'd like to find, like just the themed little bots that you can find in levels. Like, I'll see them on Twitter sometimes, and I'll be like, I would have liked to see that. I did see some weird tweet like, "Yo, what's up with the stuffing the sexy robot with the weird fetish?" Like, I guess there's like a box, and you stuff like hard drive slots into it or something, and like it keeps doing heart eyes, like something really weird. I was like, I don't know, like whatever. The machine wants the hard drives, I guess. Like, I don't know what the context was.
Context makes more sense, but yeah. The bots, like, I think one of the reasons I enjoyed it is because you rescue. So this isn't really spoilers, but the kind of like premise of the game is basically that your ship gets destroyed by an alien, and when the ship gets destroyed, all of Astrobot's little companions get spread out across the galaxy. So you have to go find them, and that's kind of your reason for exploration, and also what the collectibles end up being are, bots. But I really enjoyed going through because not all of the bots, but many of the bots in each level are in costume, and the costumes are always some PlayStation theme throughout the years. So it was really fun, like rescuing one and being like, what costume is this? Or if you recognize it right away, you're like, oh, that's such and such. That's so fun. So like it is definitely just a fun, happy, enjoyable game.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely looking to playing it eventually at some point, but just haven't got there. Have you played anything else since you finished it, or you just kind of...
You know, I finished it, and I finished it so quick that I actually went back and beat Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. So I started up my like New Game Plus file and played through that with like the upgraded weapons. But I was really just looking for like, oh, I need some other platforming kind of fun, mindless games. I just played Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart again, which is also just such a great game. Like the arsenal in that game is, I think, my favorite Ratchet and Clank arsenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really good in that one. A lot of fun in
Yeah,
that game.
that was pretty much it. Just went through those two.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I did after I beat. I beat Chance of Sonar. I talked about that last week, I believe. I either beat it after the podcast or I beat it Saturday, and I can't remember if I beat it before. No, I must have beat it Saturday because I think I titled that episode like "Final Thoughts on Chance of Sonar." And so I was trying to figure out like what to play next, and I ended up picking up or trying out Forever Skies, which is in early access. You know, I talked about I picked it up because they refunded Concord, but I hadn't actually tried playing it yet. So I started playing that, and it's basically, you know, Subnautica in the air. It's kind of the pitch you can give it. And I like it so far, but there are a little annoyances I have, and that could just be because it was me starting a new game. So I got to like learn its little quirks and ins and outs. And I'm really curious, like, so I played 10 hours or almost 11 hours of the game. I think I'm going to stop where I'm at because I'm kind of like, okay, I've put enough time into it. I don't want to progress the story. Like, I don't know how far the story goes. But I was like, okay, I think I'm just going to stop. And then when 1.0 comes out, then I'll just do a new game, obviously, because I'll probably have to. And I'll have a much better idea of, okay, here's what I should focus on. Here's what I should be on the lookout for. Here's what I know I can get. And here's, you know, some other things, yada, yada, and kind of just get back to where I was a lot quicker. Kind of like when I restarted Liza P and I just like got back to the point I needed to in like 5 hours versus like the 10 hours it took me to get there in the first playthrough. But like, I feel like, so the way it kind of starts you off, again, it's very Subnautica. Like, I think you drop down from like a space station, I think, orbiting this planet, and you kind of crash down, like something goes wrong, very Subnautica. You land on the planet, and it's like, oh, there's a virus on this planet, a lot like Subnautica, right? And it's like, it tells you
basically
like,
exactly Subnautica.
And there's like this layer of dust that's kind of taken over the planet, and you're way above on skyscrapers, and you start with a little ship, and it kind of teaches you like, okay, here's how you get materials, yada yada, this and that. And I feel like the stuff that takes the longest is, so you get like this, essentially it's a fishing pole that you put onto your ship, and you put in a lure, you drop it down, it goes down, and it brings something back up. Usually it's like a dust lettuce, and you can throw it into your cooker and cook it. The problem I have is the fishing takes too long, and I think it's based on the lure you use, like on the basic lure.
Don't let Zaya hear you say that.
Yeah, and then because I used like a more advanced lure later, and I felt like it fished up much faster. But also the cooking takes too long. Like cooking in Subnautica is like, you need food's easy. You go out, you grab a fish, you go back in, you throw it on the thing, it cooks the fish, you're good. Like it's super easy, right? And this is like, okay, I gotta drop the line, wait for it. It doesn't automatically reel itself up. It does this little ka-kunk, ka-kunk, ka-kunk to like let you know, like as if a fish was biting and the tip of your fishing pole was kind of going up down. It's like it's going ka-kunk, like, hey, we've got some, and you have to go to it, reel it back up, wait for it, because obviously it drops it like thousands of feet down because you're way above the surface of the planet. Take this stuff off the line, put it in your little pressure cooker, it cooks it. That takes a long time, and then you do it. And it's just like the process of fishing and cooking to get food in the beginning takes too long. And I feel like on normal, I'm playing on normal, I feel like the water and food depletion rates on normal is a little too fast. I think that needs to slow down on normal because it felt like, I mean, I'm used to these kind of games, like, and it felt like it was just draining too fast. And I was like, I felt like so much of the early game me was like, okay, make sure I'm just constantly getting food. And it's like, all right, now I gotta sleep to get my stamina back. But when you sleep, you also you deplete, food and water. And I just feel like it's a little too quick. They gotta slow that down. Eventually, you get to a nice spot where it's like either getting water is not that difficult. Like you can find some dirty water. I think you build a filter pretty quick. You put that on your ship. You just need empty bottles in order to collect that stuff. And usually when you go around like points of interest, you can find that pretty easy. And eventually it gets to a spot where I'm like, okay, the food isn't that bad. Maybe I find some bugs or something and I kill them and cook them up and they get a lot of food, or I have a better lure, or I find old rations when I'm exploring some base somewhere. And that could be a bit annoying. Crafting also takes
just out of curiosity, but how many times have you restarted the game? Are you just playing like you've played once through so far to like this point?
Once through for 10 hours, one save. I haven't done any restarts. I mean, I technically did restart because the game crashed on me when I first jumped in, like the first 15 minutes when I was trying to stream on OBS because I didn't have the game's like a resource hog, and I had to turn on DLSS eventually in order to be able to stream it at the same time and still have it look good. Eventually, I was 2 PC streaming, I had it up on my laptop, and then I would just plug the laptop into my Elgato and stream it that way. But then I went back to my main PC. I was like, I got to be able to do this on here, and I just put on DLSS on performance mode, and then I was able to stream it without having any issues. But no, just essentially just the one run all the way through. And I said, once I get past the hiccup, and like I said, when you get the better lures, which do require better ingredients to make, it's like those get you better food, which have more, they give you like, oh, it's plus 50 food, which is like really good. It's like, okay, now I don't have to make as much. But the food also has an expiration date on it. I mean, so does it does in Subnautica as well, unless you cure it. But it tells you a timer like, oh, this food is going to expire in 1 day. And like it's IRL day. And then it's like, or this one's like 2 days. So it's like, okay, you can stockpile some food, but it's like it's going to go bad if you do that. But if you're going to play the next day, you're pretty good. But eventually you get to a spot where it's like, okay, it's not too bad. But I feel like in the beginning it's a little annoying, and I felt like I was doing too much of that. Like food was too important versus just, hey, I want to get resources to make my little ship better so I can go fly around and do the objectives. But crafting also takes too long. Like crafting in Subnautica, like if you're making the Cyclops, that takes a bit. If you're making part of the rocket pad, like, yeah, that can take a bit to do, but that's like one time. And also the rocket's like the end game. So like, okay, that takes a long time. That's fine. It takes a long time to make, like, there's these, just like Subnautica, instead of having to increase your depth, you have to increase your altitude by putting on these like little turbines on your ship to help increase your lift on how high you can go. And that's important because there are some point of interest where like the landing pad that you have to get to is higher up than you're able to go. And making that turbine like can just take forever. I'm like, why does crafting have to take so goddamn long, man? It's like, it takes too long. It's weird. The game, you have to learn a blueprint of an item before you can craft that item. And the blueprint for the item usually involves that item. So like you find something like a circuit board. I'm like, oh, I can get the blueprint for this, but it's going to cost me a circuit board plus another item. Then I can learn the blueprint, and now I can make the circuit board using whatever it takes. Versus like Subnautica, where
so it's a gatekeeping method of like you can't build the circuit board until you're far enough in the game to find the circuit board.
I mean, that's fine because it's like that's not an issue. It's more like I'm wasting a resource to learn the blueprint to be able to make more of it. Whereas in Subnautica, you find like, oh, you found magnesium? Okay, we got new recipes. Here's everything that magnesium can make. Like the computer's like, oh, instead of just giving you everything, every material in the entire history of the world, it just gives you what you have access to. It's like, oh, you found this? Okay, here's more info on your PDA. You can use magnesium to this. Oh, you found silver? Oh, you can make circuit boards. You could do this with silver, or it's like you scan the hull of the Cyclops. You get 3 different, 3 fragments of something, or you're your bioreactor. You find it, and it's like new blueprint acquired. And it's funny because the computer voice in this kind of sounds similar as well. And she also yells at you if you're 50% food, and like you're getting hungry. It's like, okay, be quiet. But the game also has like a voice that speaks to you, very similar to what they do in Subnautica. Yeah, it's like, so I'm like, it just seems weird. Like, I don't like that I have to craft the blueprint, especially because like usually the other item you need to craft the blueprint isn't part of the base components of that item when you actually make it. So I don't know why. It's just kind of annoying. Like, I wish that was different. I wish it was just, hey, you found it, you scanned it, just like you do in Subnautica. It should be like, this is what it takes to make this. Here's the base components. Like, I don't know why that's the case. It's like, it's a weird extra step, and I don't get it. And I feel like a lot of these early frustrations could be fine if they were just shorten the time on the cooking, the fishing, the crafting. Maybe the blueprint thing could not be a thing in 1.0. I don't know. And it's also like, why did I type? I'm like reading my notes. And one thing that's also kind of annoying that bugged me is like, so on your ship you get this little like deconstruction like a rifle thing that's a mounted rifle. And basically, one thing I do like about the game, I like a lot of things about the game. One of the other things I like about the game is like in like all the like these synthetics and metals that you need that are like really important. Like synthetics are used to make your fuel for your engines. That's the other thing. I wish I can craft more of something at once. Like there are something when you craft it, it's like you can only make one. And someone's like, okay, when you craft this, you make a bundle of 5. But like when I'm making fuel, it's like you can only craft 50 fuel and you can only carry 100 in a stack. So I'm like, just let me make 2 stacks at once. I don't want to have to make, and then obviously in Subnautica you can't do that, but I feel like that would be a great quality of life in this. Just let me make a full stack if I have the ingredients to do so. But so having to like keep making it is a little annoying.
So I will say I'm curious because it sounds like most of the complaints you've had with the game thus far are things that could actually be fixed rather easily.
Yeah.
Between pre-release and actual release. How do you like the gameplay loop though? Like the finding materials, going to new points, improving your ship. I know it's kind of the same loop as like Subnautica, but aside from like the annoyances of like crafting and things, do they execute the actual loop well? Or is it like, you find, I haven't really followed the game. So is it like you find one engine or something that increases your distance, but then it's like or a turbine, but then it opens up too much? Or is the progression thus far like pretty nice and gradual?
I like like in Subnautica, the way they do it is like, oh, you go explore, they kind of drip feed you distress signals, which usually you go to and they send you in a direction that's like got new resources, just some new place to explore. And then like, okay, you upgrade your depth module. Like, okay, now that my depth module, I have that installed on like my Seamoth, it's like, okay, now I should explore below 300 meters, or I know the distance for this distress signals down here, and that's like kind of your progression. Okay, I need to find out how to get that. How do I get that? Okay, I look in the blueprints. I need this mineral. I haven't found lithium yet. Okay, well, let's go look for lithium. Okay, yada yada. Like, and it kind of gives you these little ideas where you go. This is very more straightforward. It's like, okay, you need to build this stuff for your ship, kind of get you going. It's like build the this thing, build that thing, and then it's like, okay, you need to go to this exclamation point in your map. And when you first do it, it's like, okay, there's only one exclamation point you can go to. And you go there, and it's like this big base, and you kind of like run around. It kind of gives you the story. So it turns out like, okay, something went wrong with this planet hundreds of years ago, like just pollution, something went bad. They try to fix something, and it sounds like humans caused this virus that kind of came out, which is why we left the planet. And we're trying to get it fixed. And then you discover someone named Noah, and this guy seems like he's gone kind of crazy. He's talking about hearing voices in his head. He keeps drawing these crazy pictures on the wall. So like this environmental storytelling you can find. It's like you're reading his data logs. There's no audio logs. I wish there was audio logs like in Subnautica. But you're like reading these data logs from him. Like he's acting totally bonkers. But like it'll take you to a point of interest, and it's like, okay, you go there. There's stuff you can scan to learn how to make. There's more things you can find, be it like new items, what have you. And then eventually it's like once you go there and explore it and you find like typically it's the story PDA you find that tells you about like Noah saying, "Oh, I did this. I went here or whatever." It's like now you're following in his footsteps. You're trying to figure out what is this guy doing. So the game will tell you like, okay, now you want to go check out this, and so you go fly to another. And it's nice, like the point of interest all have like these flashing lights, and like a single amber light is usually like just a simple base, so you know what's going to be there. And that's the other thing too is like batteries. You can recharge, but the base battery you can't make. You just have to loot. And so you loot them from each of the point of interest that have the lights. And in the tower that has the light on it, you just take the battery out of the fuse box. And I'm like, that's fine, but like you can't craft it. Now you can craft an advanced battery later using these crystals, but that's only for things that use the crystal batteries. So a lot of the base stuff you use, like your scanner, and your base building tool, and your headlight, your flashlight for your suit, all take regular batteries. It's like you got to make sure you loot those, and it is nice at least when you loot them and you have like a radar you can make, and I made a radar. I put it like above my navigation console so I can see it. And if you loot a place entirely, like it turns it gray on the map. I'm like, okay, that's nice. And usually it'll like you can see like, okay, here's the base tower. There's question marks. You know what they are, but you can see them in the distance again through the haze, depending on how far they are. The game I like the way the game looks too. That's why it's so CPU intensive. It's like it's got this the dust effect looks really cool. There's just synthetics and metals like floating up in the air. Like I guess the synthetics are just such a lightweight material that they're like airborne tumbleweeds, and you can get out on your ship and shoot them for materials. So that's the great thing too. Is what I like is it's almost like if you're flying around and you run out of fuel, you just go out, and typically there is plenty of just synthetics tumbleweeds like floating away in the wind that you just shoot and get materials from. And sometimes you get a little bit of metal. Also, anytime you fly past a lot of like the old skyscrapers, you can see like they have like metal parts in them that you can destroy and get metal from that. Because those are obviously really important resources. But I like the loop. Like once it kind of gets you like, okay, off the guided path initially, where it's like, okay, go to a position, a point of interest that has two flashing lights, and you go and you realize, oh, okay, that kind of teaches you that the first one was just kind of a basic one. This one's a little more involved base. It's like, okay, now go to one of these exclamation points in your map, and then it gives you like a couple options. And I think, at least in EA in early access, it seems like a lot of the stuff is just the same, and I think that's just to be like it's like the same layout. So like there's these eventually you have to find an elevator that takes you down to the surface. And to unlock the elevator and where the elevator is essentially like it's the same blueprint in the building. Same layout. You need an access card to go down. When you go to the underdust, I think is what they call it, like the layout down there is the exact same. And I think that's just to help guide you better. And maybe that'll change in 1.0. But right now it's just because I went to a different one because I was like, I want to go see what a different entrance looks like. But anyways, yeah, once you get going, it's like, okay, now go to this. And it's like, okay, well, I know I can't, the landing pad's too high. So what do I need? I need a restart. I need to get this turbine. Okay, what do I need for the turbine? Let's get those resources. And in between that, I'm like, maybe you can build like a rain catcher and you have rain and then you can collect that. Or I have like a little moisture filter that just absorbs moisture from the air into polluted water. And I put it into my water filter system and filter that into regular water. So I have that because you also need water for cooking. And then sometimes I'll like, throw the fishing line down, do whatever. So I get that loop of like, get this. Now I did have an issue where it was like, I needed copper and copper became super important. And I was like, where the fuck do I get copper? And I was like, trying to look that up. And it's like, oh, you get it at all the wind farms, all the windmills. I was like, don't remember seeing copper, but it turns out copper was just like it's a resource that you have to deconstruct, just like the airborne stuff. And you only have the deconstructing tool on your ship. And eventually I was like, well, how do I make the handheld version of this? And I'm like, it's like, oh, I need a crystal. I was like, where the fuck do I get these crystals? And I'm like, why can I make one on my ship that does the same thing, but I can't make a handheld version of it? It's like, but that one doesn't need a crystal. So it was just a little annoying thing there. I'm like, so that was like behind progression, which is frustrating. But I passed up some windmills early game that I didn't realize, oh, I should be shooting this copper. So knowing that now, it's like, okay, I need to make sure I get this resource early, like immediately when I see it. Like I know, okay, position the ship get the resource, yada yada. But yeah, like knowing that, like, oh, I need this. Okay, where can I get that? A lot of stuff I could just make. I did kind of trap myself in a bit where like, so it tells me to go to like this one exclamation point. It's like a purple light, really tall building. I have to increase the height my ship can go. I do that. I go up there. It's like, okay, I have to get into the door, but I need a like an access card. But to make the access card, I need to have an access module that as the subcomponent. I'm like, okay, how do I craft that? And like, okay, it's like this needs this. That was easy. Now to get that, I need the copper, and that kind of sent me out the copper run. It's like, okay, how do I get copper? Oh, and I needed a circuit board. It's like, oh, how do I get circuit boards? And I'm like, oh, well, I looked up like the circuit boards are usually in the same point of interest as the copper, which is the windmill locations, and those aren't as plentiful around the map as some of the other ones. So that was kind of tough to like go back and look for them since I passed those up early on getting the copper, and then luckily I got this pretty quick. It was like, okay, and I got to go search for it, yada yada. Then I get down. It's like, okay, now I learned how to make, or like in order to progress, like I'm following Noah's story. He has a lab in the Underdust, but he says it's blocked. Like some stuff failed. So the game tells me I have to make the handheld deconstructor. I'm like, okay, I found crystals down there, which is what I needed. And then I was like, okay, so I get the crystals. I go up and make that. Great. It uses crystal battery, new battery type. I can craft those. Awesome. I get that. Then it's like, okay, go to the lab. I get the virus sample, and I have to build a virus analyzer. I'm like, all right, so let's build a virus analyzer. And I'm like, okay, I can't because now I have too much stuff on my ship, and now I'm at my weight limit. Kind of like I guess your, construction capacity on your Subnautica base, where you have to like reinforce it in order to put more modules on. But this is just like the weight limit of your ship because it's a airship, right? You're going to have a weight limit. So I have to expand the hull. So now it's like, okay, it's like a step of, I need this, but I have to do these things first. So let's upgrade my ship. So I have to get the materials I need to upgrade that. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Get that, yada, yada. Might take me back. I forget exactly what I needed for that. I think I need more copper. So I had to like fly around, look for copper, find a windmill. And so I expand that. I build the analyzer. And then, I think it was like, okay, after I get the blueprint for the analyzer. So I have to build the blueprint first, which is fine. But in order to build the analyzer, I needed epoxy. And I only had one. I was like, okay, what's the blueprint for epoxy? And the blueprint for epoxy was like some stuff I had plus plant resin. I'm like, where the fuck do I get plant resin? And I was like, I had no idea how to get plant resin because I don't think I've ever seen it. Like I've had plant oil, but I have plant resin. So that kind of like, okay, whatever. I'm like, so I got stuck on this whole trip of like, how the fuck am I going to get epoxy? And this is kind of my fault. Where like that became like a big issue. And I was kind of doing other stuff, like exploring while I was trying to solve this problem. Turns out like when I was in the Underdust getting the crystals, that's where I found the one epoxy, but there was actually a ton of epoxy down there. I just didn't see it. I guess I didn't look hard enough for it, but it was like when I went down into the second location, I was like, oh shit, there's just a ton of this down here. Like, again, it's the same layout. I'm like, it's just all there. So I picked it up. I was like, I don't need to make the blueprint for it. I mean, I did eventually because I got to this part where it's like, oh, there's a plant. I think it's like a carnivorous plant or something. It's blocking the path to where I need to go. And it's like, I had to make something that lowers my body temperature. So I had to collect
so that it couldn't detect you.
Yeah, so then it doesn't get activated. It's like the heat for me is what makes it kind of, and I couldn't destroy it. I had a knife. I also keep finding crossbow bolts, but like I couldn't make the crossbow for like fucking forever. Like I had to finish exploring the Underdust in order to actually get to the crossbow. But anyways, so I make that, and like I had to make the virus analyzer, and then like I didn't realize what I needed to. I looked it up because I'm like, I'm just gonna look it up. It's like, oh, you need to take you need to get, if you get meningitis, I think like because there's these bees down there. One of the bees stung me and it gave me meningitis. It makes you like hallucinate in the game for whatever reason, like, which is kind of funny because it's like it kind of reminds me of that fish in Subnautica that hypnotizes you and you hear the PDA voice talking to you like, hey,
it's one of my favorite fish. That one is so cool, by the way.
Yeah, so like sometimes the PDA voice will, or your computer voice will say something, but it's like kind of unintelligible and you're like, what did they say? And also your vision gets a little funky sometimes, but and then you take the honey from their beehive and you put it in the analyzer, you analyze it, and that creates the helps you learn how to make the like, I think what they call it, the hypothermia, whatever. It teaches me how to make the thing. So I make that. That lets me get past the plant. I get to progress further into the Underdark. I find plant resin down there, so I collect that. I'm like, oh, awesome, there's plant resin. I find a bunch more crystals. I progress the story. I get attacked by like this giant, like essentially it's like a giant grasshopper, not grasshopper, a giant praying mantis, like huge, like 7 foot tall, jumps up in front of me. I'm like, oh shit! I try to back up, and I can't go back where I just came in. Like, I didn't realize there's like a force field, and then like this force field dome pops up around me, and then they get killed, and then this voice starts talking to me, telling me I need to follow in Noah's footsteps and continue what he was doing. And I see Noah's body there, like just being consumed by the tree. So I feel like there's some ancient Gaia tree or something talking to me. Like I don't know, but I like go in there, follow, and then his notes told me to go find another lab. He needed some more resource from a lab somewhere, and like that's where I stopped on that projection. But like all of that stuff I did story wise and exploring and crafting was that 11-hour experience.
I mean, it sounds like the game has a lot of potential, and I know that other streamers and things have been really enjoying it so far, so I'm pretty excited about it. I do hope they fix some of the things you were mentioning, but I feel like even Subnautica and like The Forest and games like that, a lot of them update. Well, in No Man's Sky, stacking of materials, they all update like how storage is handled, how crafting is handled as people kind of give feedback. That seems like a pretty common thing for survival games. So hopefully Forever Skies also does this.
Yeah, and it feels like every time you go to a point of interest that the game kind of guides you to, it's like, okay, when you go there, it's like it progresses, you learn a little bit more about the world, it gives you a new list of objectives or things to do in order to progress further. Like that's the main thing. And I do like having the ship from the jump because it's a lot like I like having I forget what they call it in Below Zero, but I like having just that little ship where it's like it's all the modules because like, oh, this is like I tuned into someone's stream the other day just to see because hardly anybody's streaming the game again because it's so resource intensive. Like some people that stream it like they have the game on like super low graphics, or like the stream quality is not that great because they got to like compensate for it because it's again such a hog. That's why I'm glad I was able to stream at the quality I'm able to. But and like all the VODs are up, they'll go down. But if you can like hop in and check and look at anyone, and I like the game. I like having the ship. I like the idea of expanding. Like that was one of the first things I did. Like I'm going to expand the ship. Like I wanted it 3x3. I was like, I'll just do 2x3 because I wanted to like I gotta make this. I gotta put a little put in the turbines and the engines on the ship was a little annoying because I'm like, all right, let's like just the way you have to position them was a little weird. Like so I'd probably design for that better. But like I think adding all those modules was one of the issues that kind of slowed me down from being able to put the virus analyzer on it because each of those cubes of space that I put on there, it added weight. And I think I probably could have saved myself having to expand my ship if I didn't do 2x3. If I just made it like maybe 3 and then 1. If I saved 2 spaces, because I didn't necessarily need them. I wish there was bigger. I wish I can get access to bigger storage bins faster. And it's funny because the storage bins weigh 2 pounds. So at one point I was at max capacity, so I can make the storage bin. I could pick it up on my person. I can put it in another storage box, but I couldn't put it out to use because it weighs 2 pounds. I'm like, but I got the box in the other box, or I could drop it and it's still on the ship, but it doesn't weigh 2 pounds until I put it down to be able to use. So I wish I could get bigger ones of those because I had to make a couple just to put like extra shit in. And it seems like, yeah, there's like a lot of stuff. Like I went to one point of interest I never went to before. I was like, what is this for? Because there's like, it's clearly kind of beaten down. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of plants and seeds I can farm from this thing if I land on it. I'm like, oh, that's how I was looking for like a sun melon. And I was like, oh, I found the sun melon. And then I found like some other seeds for stuff. And there's cool stuff like you can find like food that you can make essentially like an energy drink out of because you can refill your stamina. Because as your stamina decreases, that's also the max speed at which you can run. There's also I got hit by a bug. There's like this weird bug hiding in this plant bed. And I could hear him, but I couldn't see him because it's kind of dark. I hadn't made the flashlight yet. And he hits me, and I get hit with photophobia. So, like, if I look at the sun, I take damage. I'm like, I just want to look at the sun.
It's actually kind of funny.
I was like, I do that in real life all the time. I don't look at the sun. So I was like, that was fun. I had this one bit where like, again, because it was a combat update. So I thought, oh, maybe the combat will be like crazy, but I've only had the knife, so I haven't really done anything. But I got up to this point of interest on stream. well, I was on stream, so I streamed the whole thing. But I get up on this point, I climb this ladder, and I hear like this weird noise. And I look up, there's like this giant centipede overhanging this where I'm trying to get past. I'm like, oh shit! So like I was like, I had no idea. Like, okay, well, I think the beetle I killed went down in like one swipe. I was like, I don't know what this guy's gonna do to me, and I don't know how easy it's gonna get killed. Luckily, I it just died in one swipe, and cooking it gave me 50 food, which was nice. But yeah, like there are a lot of things I like about it. Like I like just again flying around. You can go faster if you build more engines. So that's how you increase your speed. You just build more engines. Obviously, you have to build more fuel. They give you access to new fuel types pretty quick. So instead of synthetic fuel, you can get biomass fuel, which is like a slightly better. And then there's some other fuels you can make that are also, I think, like a slightly better. So like there's a clear path of progression. I'm not sure because of how guided the story is. Like that is the one thing about Subnautica. It's like there's usually a lot of directions you can go. And then once you make certain progress, like that kind of triggers the, hey, like if I had made the turbine to go higher just because, then it was like, oh, now the game triggers you. Like you don't get, like I don't think the sunbeam talks to you in Subnautica. Like there is a time limit, but I don't think it does for quite a while. And then it does early if you find like a certain thing that.
Yeah, Subnautica has like you've dicked around too long time limit of talking to you, but then other than that, I do think if you like progress far enough, you can instantly trigger it.
Yeah. There are things like I think it's like because some things are like once you find a depth module, it's like okay, or you find the resource that lets you craft the thing that will help you. The game that's the trigger. That's the door you go through, and it's like okay, the player has access to what they need now. Trigger this event, and they do that in Subnautica a lot, where it's like, yeah, you've made progress. Now more things done. And there seems to be a little less of that in Forever Skies. Like I could fly around and just go explore places, but I'm like, all the base camps I know they're gonna have the battery in the tower, which I'll take the battery because I need it. But it's like, and they'll have usually some resources I can collect, maybe some cans of water, so I could just carry those around to rehydrate myself. But there are again, I like it. There are a lot of things I like about it. It's just these little things I feel like that could be streamlined to help the user experience in the beginning. And again, knowing that now, I feel like if I were to start again, it would go so much smoother because I'd know like, oh, watch out for copper. Like this, I feel like is a game where like, yes, 10 beginner tips would go hard. Like, just get off the starting thing, get your ship out, go get this and that, go to the objective, follow the golden path as fast as you can so you can get that deconstruction gun. Because that's also super helpful. Because what's nice is like sometimes you get to a point of interest where it's like there's a room that's blocked off. And what you can do is you can fly your ship around and then just use the deconstruction gun on your ship and just shoot all that stuff off so you get access to it. So that's really cool. And it's funny, like the other benefit of being able to fly up higher is that you're not in the path of the debris. Like at one point I was flying from one point of interest to another and there's just this big old like debris field I was going through, but all the debris is just smacking my ship and it's like, oh, you're taking damage. And then if your turbines take damage, or if your turbines take damage, your maximum height also slowly decreases. I do wish the repair mechanic was different in this game. Like you get these patch kits and it's like, oh, you lost altitude. I'm like, okay, but I'm at like 80%, but you lose like a pretty decent chunk of altitude just by being at 80%. And the visual feedback to the player that a module is damaged is like, even if it's only like 5% damaged, it can look like that looks like a lot of damage. Like the color, like why are you making it look like that whole corner's gonna fall off? But I wish when I fix the ship, it would just do one massive HP pull and not have each individual part of the ship have its own bit that needs to be fixed. I'm like, that bugs me a little bit because I'm like, all right, what's broken? You pull out your patch kit and kind of just hover it over all the places. Like, okay, that one's at 95. I don't want to waste a patch kit on that, so I just won't do it. I'll wait, just do on the stuff that matters. It's funny, I had one where like I was building a part of my base and I was looking at an item and I thought I hit the right button. Like I was looking at trying to build I forget what they call it, but like essentially a balcony on the outside of my ship so I could more easily put fuel back into the engines. And because I was like, I kept trying to like peek out the edge because there's no windows in any of the modules you put up. You just have to put those windows or walls yourself. So I just left them open. And so I was like peek out and I'm like, I don't want to fall off my ship, so let's build something. And I was trying to build a little balcony thing on the outside, but at one point I had it on the inside. I'm like, well, let's switch to something else. And I hit the wrong button and I put that down and that's what it was. I thought before I knew that there was no windows on the outside of the square modules, because they put like these little electronic, essentially like do not cross lines. But I thought that was like just a weird window pane thing. Like I didn't know what it was. I didn't realize it was in like a hologram of like, hey, don't cross this because there's no glass here. So I was trying to deconstruct something, and I accidentally deconstructed the whole square module I was standing on. I just fell to my death. Luckily, though, because I had progressed, like if you die early on, it just respawns you in the pod that you took down to the planet, but it just respawned me on a ship. And you lose a percentage of the stuff you carry. So like anytime I go exploring, I try to take all the important stuff out of my inventory, but then I'm like, damn it, I kind of need some of that stuff, and I gotta go back. But yeah, there are little things I wish they'd streamline. But other than that, like I like doing it. Again, it can take a while to like fly around, to get from point A to point B because stuff is really far away. I didn't realize how the thunderstorms are so loud. Like there's thunderstorms in the game, and they have their own audio slider. That's how loud they are. And I'm like typically that shit's on SFX.
That seems excessive.
And it was so loud. I was like, turn it down. But it kept on like warning, like storm incoming. But I always ignored it. Nothing ever happened. I finally had an instance. I think because I was flying too high. Careful, Icarus. And I got struck by lightning, and like one of my engines like took a ton of damage. I was like, oh shit. And I was like, I guess the lightning is really dangerous. Good. Let's not fly that high in the storm. But I didn't want to fly low because I didn't want to go into the debris fields. But I do love that. Again, I like that the debris is just out there. It's easy to get those base resources you need. When you can put your ship on autopilot for speed. So you just point the direction you want to go. It's like 2 kilometers away, and you just put it on lock the speed, and you can go out. You can drop your lures. You can, craft food, do whatever while your ship is basically just flying in a straight line. Destroy some resources, do whatever. Like it's supposed to be co-op when it launches, which I was like, oh, this could be really interesting cooperative. But yeah, I like it. It's just, again, a lot of that early stuff I feel like should be toned down, especially for new players. But again, when I replay it, it could be like, oh, because I know the problem, the solution to it, or like being able to focus on it more, is like super easy.
I also feel like that's hard because the starting game of most survival games is usually somewhat tricky, but then once you know it is way too easy. So there's always like a little bit of a tricky balance between starting off a new survival game.
Yeah. I don't remember ever having this issue again, because Subnautica was like, oh, I need food. I just go out, swim, catch food, just grab it with my fucking hand and throw it in the thing and it cooks it. Whereas this is like, I have to, build the lure, drop the lure, wait. And I got so low on food, I was like, oh man, I hope I can get this food fast enough and I don't die. I didn't die, but I was like, I got super scared that I was going to like just starve to death or something. But other than that, I mean, like I said, I've been enjoying it. It's just those little weird bits. I wish there was a little more like, there doesn't seem to be as much discoverability in Subnautica. Like you can't just go off and explore. Like you can like go to whatever point of interest you want, but you kind of know what they're going to have. Like, okay, this one's going to be this, this one's going to be this. I haven't found any. There are some I haven't gone to yet, just because they'll have like a red skull, and I don't know what that means, except don't go here. So there could be like more there. And again, I don't know how long the main campaign takes. Like, it wants me to go to this laboratory. I'm like, okay, how long? Where do I go from there? Like, I almost wanted to go there. I was going to play it last night, but I didn't have enough time, so I ended up playing something else. That's right. I ended up playing Star Wars. I want to talk about was
on the stealth.
It wasn't even the stealth. Like I snuck into a base, and then I get the item I need, and then I want to go out the way I came, but it makes me go out the fucking front door, and I just have to get through in a fight with a bunch of guys. I'm like, why would you make me do this? Let me leave the way I came in. Why do I have to go out the front? Like, because there's just a bunch of dudes waiting for me, and I got to fight them, and then like I died, and then the game crashed, and I'm like, I guess I'm not going to play that anymore, because at that point it was like 9:45, so I was like, all right. I hopped over into Super Animal Royale. I was like, I'll just play a couple rounds of this, and I had some guys stop by and chat, and we ended up squadding up, playing that. That game's fun. I haven't played that in a good while. Just running around in Super Animal Royale. Then I had some dude stop by and he's like, "Hey, followed." It was funny because like I have alerts for follows, and when I heard it, it sounded a lot like the sound effects in Super Animal Royale. I was like, "What does that sound? What did I do? Did I achieve something?" And I'm like, "Oh, it was a follow alert." I was like, "I didn't even realize it." It was just throwing me off. The dude like follows, starts talking. And he's like, he asked me essentially. He's trying to do all the. I forget what he's trying to do. Like, do something, but he asked if I, essentially asking like, would I buy him the like
He showed up just
edition?
to have you buy him shit.
He asked like, "Hey, would you want to do a handout?" And I like clicked on the profile, and like the dude has a lot of followers. Don't know if there really is. Barely any videos.
I mean, that
But
sounds like a bot, but
yeah, well, typically the bots, like I see, like I have had the bots going like, "Hey, get followers here," and asterisk whatever, and ban them, whatever. It was so weird. I was like, "This is weird. I'm not gonna give you the game." But anyway, that was weird. But yeah, I ended up playing for a while. Some Alexander was the guy's Twitch name, but that guy, like, he had so much luck, man. It was like every time we'd land somewhere, he'd always find like level 3 armor like immediately, and he'd just ping it for me, and I'd be like, "God damn!" I was like, "This dude's like lucky charm, man." He's like always finding the tier 3 armor everywhere we land. It was crazy, but yeah, it was fun. But yeah, the Star Wars thing. I mean, I was like the crashing and then making me fight my way out was a little annoying. I guess they had to make you do it because they want you to lose reputation with the people you're stealing from in order to give it to this new faction I found because I got off planet. It's like, okay, I guess like they have to, in order to lose reputation, they would have to know it was me that did it. And I guess this is how you do it. But so that was weird. That I talked about in Discord though. I played the Sabbat game for the first time in Star Wars. There's like a quest to do, like go into a tournament, kind of teaches you the mechanics of it and how you can cheat in the game and yada yada with Nyx. But I kind of like, it's like a simplified card game that I really like, where it's like essentially you have 2 decks in front of you. It'd be like if you had a deck of 2 different suits, like, hearts and spades, and it's like, but you only went up through like 1 through 6, and you also had a joker. It's like ace through 6 with a joker. And the idea is you have to have whoever has the lowest hand, the lowest pair, wins the hand, but it has to be of the same suit. So it'll come around, it deals you 2 cards from your deck and does everybody. And essentially they bet, they go in, and then when it's your turn, you have like, okay, you have a 2 of hearts and a 3 of spades. It's like, okay, do I want to try to draw from the heart deck to get another 2 hearts, or do I want to draw from the spade deck? So you draw from the deck maybe with your lowest card, and it gives you a card, and you have to discard one of the other cards in your hand when you take a new card. And so it's like, okay, you're trying to get the lowest one, and there's only 3 rounds, so you only have 3 rounds to do it. And then there's other mechanics of it where like there's, again, some currency thing for tokens, sending like an ante. You can kind of customize that. And then there's you can have Nyx like spy and see what the other person has if they're still in the game. There's also if you have the wild card, it matches the lowest card. It matches the other card in your hand. So that's a fun mechanic. So if you get that and you already have like a 1 or a 2, you're like, okay, I'll just stick on this because I got a pair of 2s. But I like it. It's just a very simple, low hand wins kind of card game with some extra little mechanics on it that can make it a little more involved. And I thought it was really fun. I haven't played too much of it because I haven't come across other tournaments yet. But when I played, I was like, oh, this is actually a fun little card game.
Cool.
So many card games and other games.
I know they're always usually like hit or miss because it's like that perfect balance of engrossing enough that you actually want to play it versus too complicated, and it pulls you away from the main game, and you're just like, I don't want to dive into this. I want to get back to the main story. So it's always like a little bit of a nice balance.
Yeah, that's fun. But yeah, I haven't played too much. I'm finally at the part where like the story really kicks off. It's like essentially you're tasked with getting a crew, and I'm like, okay, I'm finally there, and that's like where it opens up and lets you explore like other planets because that's where the other people you're trying to recruit are. So I'm like, all right, now I can finally get to that bit. So I'll be playing it. I probably won't stream that game just because I tried to, again, when I was streaming last night, I was like, okay, it's fine, but there's like so much talking. I'm like, until I get to like a bit where I can actually just run around the open world. I'm curious how that game will look on the Pro. Because it's not like it looks bad. It's just there's so much detail in open world. Because like Avatar Frontiers of Pandora looks good on PS5 and Xbox Series consoles. but like it looks phenomenal on PC. And this is a game too where like if you have a high-end PC, it can look really good. But the stuff they have to kind of lower down to make it run at a decent clip kind of reminds me of like Final Fantasy, just not as bad, I suppose, visually. It's still good. Yeah, that's what I've been playing. I'm trying to figure out like because Frostpunk 2 comes out this next weekend, but I got the kid because the wife and oldest are going to a camp, scouts camp over the weekend, so I won't be able to play Frostpunk 2 that much because I was gonna really want to get into that, but I'm looking forward to that releasing since I already have it. And then I still want to play Astro Bot, but I got to get back into Erd Tree and play some more of that too. At least I cleared off Chance to Snarl, which is good. I did that at least.
I mean, Astro Bot would be a good one to play.
Yeah, I just don't want to spend any money right now because
yeah, no, I get it.
And if I get it and my kid knows about it, he'll want to play. And I just told him it's coming out soon. So
you just is that the parent line nowadays? You just tell the kid like, oh, it's not out yet.
Yeah, it'll be coming out soon. Yeah, because like he wants to play the Rescue Mission on VR. I'm like, I don't have VR, man. I'm not getting VR just so you can play Rescue Mission. Oh man, the one note I have here just for miscellaneous shit is like I had a car maintenance scheduled for yesterday, but I was like, the wife hasn't been feeling good. She's been recovering from COVID, so I was like, okay, if you're not feeling well, I'm not going to do it. Yada yada. She's like, okay, feeling better. They're giving like I forget what the Paxlovid, the medicine they give you.
I think that's right.
Yeah, she's been taking that, and like, so she's been doing better. I'm like, all right, well, I'll still cancel it anyways. So I was like, I go on the website. I'm like, okay, I want to cancel my appointment. And it's like, all right, we've sent you a text message and an email with the security code. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'll wait for that. And I look on and go, you got 30 seconds to enter the code. I'm like, what? I was like, 30 seconds.
I always hate those. I'm always panicked and like, oh my God, I can't type it in quick enough.
I'm like, 30. I'm like, waiting for this fucking, I'm like, an email ain't going to come in fast enough. I got to go to Google, go to Gmail, get in there, look at it, yada, yada. Like if I was on my phone, maybe, because at least, I am sure Android probably does it, but like iPhone, if it sees a security code, it copies that shit to your board right away and you go back to where you need to. And it's like, paste it in. But I was on my computer and I'm like, fuck. I'm like, give me the text message. And I'm like, waiting for the text message. And it gets in. I have like, by the time I get it, I go, okay, put it in. I failed. I'm like, damn it. I'm like, okay, send me another code. Do it again. I'm like, I got to get this shit faster. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing 30 seconds? Like most other places, like, oh, we sent you code. It's like, you got 15 minutes and the code expires. You got 5 minutes and the code expires. You go to check out tickets on Fandango. It's like, you got these tickets reserved for 10 minutes or else the seat, you give up your seats. It's like they give you time. I'm 30 seconds. That's fucking too fast for fucking canceling car maintenance. I'm not like doing shit with my bank account or something more important. Like I'm canceling an appointment. Like, come on, man. What the fuck? But it was just so weird. I was like, God, I'm like, sure as shit hope I get that text message fast enough. Like, but goddamn, it was stressful. Like 30 seconds. Motherfucker. But, and yeah, there's this other game that I've been watching Northernlion play called Dale and Dawson. Something's like an Office Among Us game, and it looks really fun. It's just, I don't have enough people. There's not enough people to play that with right now.
Too many games, too.
Yeah. It's cheap. It's only like $8. Like, if I knew that Zaya and Michael could play it, it's like, I'll just buy it and gift it to them. I'm like, but 3 people isn't enough. I'm like, we need more. I'm like,
I mean, for a game like that, you need like 8 to 10 people, like a full big group that you can play it with regularly, like a party night thing.
You could probably do it with, like, I've seen them do it with, I think 5. You have like 4 people and 1 slacker, and like that I feel like 5 is like the minimum to do it. But yeah, when I watched them play, they had like, how many did they have? I think they had like 10, 11 people playing the other day. They had so many people. Not just the NLSS crew, but like, I guess some people from Yogg's cast and something else. And that was, it was hectic, but it was just like, it was fun. It was like, man, there's one of those games that's going to be like, just like everything else, I never really got to play that much Among Us. I so many other games I just hardly ever got to play that were like, not even flash in the pan.
I mean, some of those games, it's really hard if you don't have like a big gaming crew or if you're not willing to just play online with random people.
Yeah. Like at least a game like Mysterium, like you could do that with 3 people. Like we've played Mysterium, and
we played Mysterium with we played it with Michael the one time, so we played it with 4, and it was fun. Yeah,
like that's fun. And then like we've done, myself, Michael, and Zaya have done Escape Simulator on Steam. Like you could do that with 3 people. You can even do it with 2 people. Like Zaya and I did just to be like, you don't need a lot for that kind of game. But like, there's these other games I really want to play. It's just you know, like cyanide to do that 2-person content warning, like that worked. You can do that with 2 people. But yeah, there's just so many games because all these like indie games, they come on PC because it's just easier for them to do. And it's like, man, I wish these were on. If they were on PlayStation, at least then, the PC limitation on your end wouldn't be a thing because you can just it can be done on there. But it's like, of course, then usually your prices are going to be higher if it's on PlayStation. So it's just
Don't worry, I got to get a new PC soon, anyways.
I know. I keep Lenovo keeps hitting me with like, yo, we got some deals, and I'm like,
fucking everything's too expensive. It's gonna be coming up soon.
Yeah, but all right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. I said hopefully, so we probably won't have a podcast next weekend, unless I can get. I gotta see if I know my mom hasn't hung out with the youngest in a while. I gotta see if she wants to spend some time with him. If she can, maybe we'll be able to. I'll see if she can hang out with him Sunday next weekend. Then we get to record. Maybe I can get some game time in. It's gonna be tough because I won't even want a game after he goes to sleep because he probably won't go to sleep right away. I'll have to lay down with him, help him fall asleep. So just anything I play, it'll just be maybe I'll play some more Star Wars next week or something since I can use a controller and play that pretty easily. But yeah. Anyway. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. So thank you for all for tuning and listening. Thank you, Isli, for joining.
Yep.
And we'll see you all next time.
Later.